All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is David Patrick Harry with Church of the Eternal Logos. And tonight, I want to talk to you guys about insane asylums, the contagious of psychosis, and the epidemic of mental illness. So you're thinking, Patrick, what kind of you getting into tonight? And I got to say, what spawned tonight's stream was actually me and my fiance watching the movie Shutter Island. So earmuffs, for any spoiler alerts if you haven't watched the movie. It is a great movie. It's a movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, and it's sort of a psychological thriller in which he is going around this mental institute on Shutter Island, and it turns out he himself is the one that turns out to be crazy. So I'm not going to give you too many details. You guys can go watch the movie, but um, it led me to start thinking about the role of mental institutes and insane asylums. And that caused me to do a little research and seeing a process called deinstitutionalization. This is a phenomenon that got going towards the mid to the second half of the 20th century, in which there was a move to do away with mental hospitals for the purposes of using psychiatric drugs and stuff to deal with people that have various mental illnesses. Well, I want to make a thesis tonight that what we're seeing is actually the public sphere becoming, in a way, our insane asylums. That when we look at the homelessness crisis, we look at the mental health crisis in our society, we look at the drug addiction, we look at the filth of the inner cities, that I think it's hard not to notice a precipitous decline in American society in relationship to this sort of movement to kind of soften the edges of mental illness and how we treated it. Now, I understand, again, doing some of the research, that mental institutes weren't exactly the most wonderful place to be, historically speaking. But one of the things that I also discovered in research is that mental illness can be contagious. And I do have a medical paper to actually talk to you and show you this, that they have found that, interestingly enough, things like happiness are not contagious. So if you're happy and you're around happy people, that doesn't necessarily mean you are going to be happy. However, what they have found is that depression, anxiety, these sort of more negative states associated with mental health, in fact, are contagious. And they did this during a study, with at least the paper that I was going to show you guys has to do with like college dorms and looking at what they considered mental health as being a real contagion. And so I want to tie a few things together tonight. One, that mental illness, in fact, is contagious. Another one is that America is witnessing the largest mental health crisis in its history, and that deinstitutionalization has been an absolute disaster, and that we are also witnessing a mass psychosis that is being facilitated through the internet and social media. So on a fun note, I have some ridiculous videos to show you from TikTokers, like a girl dressed up like a pig, filling her bathroom full of dirt and rolling around in it. Furries, various aspects of people with gender dysphoria, and how this is, again, being spread through the internet. I've talked about before that Gen Z has a 1 in 4 relationship to those who identify as LGBTQ, 25% of that generation. So I want to talk a little bit about this, and then we're going to got tons of papers, and we got some fun videos to watch. So smash that like for everybody who's here. I appreciate you guys joining me on this Friday night. Thank you very, very much. And so mental health and mental illness, in fact, is contagious. There is real evidence for this to various degrees. And so recent medical studies have shown that mental illness can, in fact, be contagious, and it's similar to a virus. Interesting. Very interesting. And happiness, as I said, is not contagious, but these more negative effects are. I began to then look into, insanity. The title is Insane Asylums. And insanity, or sanity, or being sane, actually comes from the Latin word sanus, which had to do with health. And throughout tradition, those who were characterized as insane, or those who were sane, means they had a healthy mind in a healthy body. And so sanity and insanity has to do with a sort of problematic feature with the mind and its ability to reason, its ability to understand reality, its ability to understand the actual threats. And that's interesting because mental illness is not necessarily associated with a structural deficiency in the brain. It has to do with the mind. Now, of course, because we live in a sort of materialistic, secular, atheist world, people have speculated that the mind is just an emergent phenomenon of brain activity and brain connection, and therefore they don't really give a lot of credence to the idea of a mind or a sort of spiritual dimension to all this stuff. But I think there's absolutely a spiritual dimension of this, because there's multiple cases of when somebody does become insane, their mind becomes unhealthy, that will then become detrimental to their bodily functions and their body itself. Sometimes there leads into self-harm. You start looking at things that people are doing. We've seen again aspects of the sort of radicalization through the transgender movement, and it seems, wow, that's really interesting, right? Because psychosis has to do with the inability to actually perceive reality and in fact live more inside a fantasy within the deficiencies of the mind. That's really interesting. And so, as an Orthodox Christian, we have a spiritual understanding of the logismy, right? That the demons and demonic activity is actually taking place most pointedly in the imagination. This is a point of contact. This is something we have to watch ourselves. This is why prayer and controlling our mental images, controlling our thoughts, is essential to our spiritual health. Now, we look at our society and the proliferation of pornography, um, violent movies, and degenerate entertainment around our societies. And it's like, wow, is this an opening for spiritual problems? I would speculate that absolutely is. And I have an article that we're not going to read it. I have it. I did a video on it, I think last year on my members channel for the $5 a month website members, talking about the relationship between insanity and demonic possession and patristic thought. Now, these were two separate things. However, they do overlap because demonic possession does lead people to insane behavior. And from an Orthodox perspective, that makes sense because it's through the mind in which the demons, these noetic entities, are able to contact you and influence you. So, in relation to all this, we're seeing in America the largest mental health crisis ever. And I have multiple articles highlighting this. We're seeing the use of SSRIs, psychiatric drugs, and various forms of depression absolutely skyrocketing to levels never seen before. In the pandemic or the plandemic, hasn't helped at all. I have an article talking about a significant rise in the cases of psychosis within England post 2020. So we look at things that are happening in the Western world, although my conversation today is really going to be oriented around America, but I think they can be extrapolated to look at generally the Western world that has bought into many of these sort of these Western liberal societies and these progressive movements. So when we're thinking about psychosis and the inability of people to actually perceive reality, but instead are operating and existing within a self-perceived fantasy, it's hard not to associate this with videos that we're going to see with people such as furries, who we are seeing now people identifying as cats, as dogs, as various animals. We're seeing sexual fetishes tied to this thing. We're seeing gender dysphoria. And I would say this is a form, I know it's uncommon, but gender dysphoria historically was a mental illness. And it was a sort of psychosis and the inability to perceive one's reality, meaning what sex and therefore gender you are. So I have an article and related to this of academics actually arguing for zoophilia. Yes, arguing for the acceptance of bestiality. Now you say, well, what does that have to do with mental illness? Well, I think it's a significant in relationship to mental illness, because what it has to do with is an inability to understand correct sexual actions. The idea that animals can consent to sex and all this different stuff is absolutely insane. Insane. We saw in Mississippi, I don't know if I talked about this previously. I actually showed this in a stream a long time ago. There was a young girl. I mean, she was like 18 years old, 17 years old, and she filmed herself engaging in coitus with a dog in front of a Christian church, filmed it and put it on TikTok. That is insane. That is a form of insanity. And so the largest consumer of psychiatric drugs right now are women in America. We've talked about the Forbes article that speculates that for the first time in history, the American society is going to reach a point by 2030 where 50% of women will be single and childless into their later stages, meaning 35 plus. That's unheard of. And we're seeing the unhappiness of women at an all-time high. Right now, from the article, one of the articles we'll be seeing today is that according to a 2020 study, 1 in every 5 women are on a psychiatric drug. Now, this includes men too, because as I've talked about before, the leading cause of death among men under the age of 45 is suicide, killing themselves. That's unreal. That's a form of insanity. That's certainly related to demonic activity. And so you can't help to think that the collapsing of the nuclear family, the loss of traditional values, the loss of any sort of transcendent orientation, i.e., Christianity or religion, generally speaking, is aiding and abetting in a major mental crisis in the Western world. And in fact, I want to highlight here that I believe America is, in fact, if we're going to sort of anthropomorphize nation states, it is completely self destructive. I was recently watching a video from the Sean Ryan show. He's a former Navy SEAL, and he has a woman, Sarah Adams, on, and she was a CIA targeter. It's incredible 2-part conversation. I highly recommend if you're able to. Shout out to Jonathan, one of our premium members, for showing me that. But in it, she highlights she was a key targeter amongst terrorists in Pakistan, Afghanistan, and the Middle East, generally speaking. And she talked about how the links that she would go to target various, high Al Qaeda officials, and how the United States at the highest levels was actually hindering the process. She highlighted that some of the major terrorists that she was supposed to stop, in fact, were getting visas to come to the United States and come through the southern border. That's insane. And so we look at our nation as a whole, and we're arguably led by psychopaths. And psychopathy is something where people develop narcissistic tendencies, the inability to feel emotion, the inability to empathize with other people. And it sure seems like that's who we're being led by. And this is an insane society. We're moving into pure insanity. And in fact, it is a contagion. That's what's so interesting about it. And so we, like I said, we're seeing homelessness at an all-time high. I also have an article to show you guys regarding that. And one of the articles highlights that it was like 40-some% of homeless people are clinically diagnosed with a form of mental illness. Now, it could be much higher, obviously, but that is startling. And as I said, American cities are the new insane asylums. And of course, they want you to get out of your rural or suburban lifestyle. They want us all to move into these electronic grid cities, right? These green cities, 15-minute cities. And yet I have an article specifically citing how living in cities actually increases mental illness. That it has an inverse effect in regards to personal relations with each other. Ironic, right? That the people that live rurally, the people that live further away from each other, people that live in the suburbs actually have better relationships with each other. And they tend to have an overall higher mental health. Makes sense. And so we're seeing a sort of the deinstitutionalization of mental health hospitals and facilities is leading to everything be led and put out on the street. And inner cities, we see a filthiness and a rising of crime. I just took my fiance out for a date night in Indianapolis. Now, Indianapolis isn't one of the largest cities. I think it's 10th maybe in the United States or something like that. But just then, we couldn't walk one block without a man who is clearly insane yelling at everybody while we were walking by. And it's incredible. the rate that we're seeing across our country. And so deinstitutionalization, as I'll show you guys here in a few, I believe is an absolute disaster. And many critics have highlighted where others have said deinstitutionalization hasn't gone far enough due to the fact that we no longer have a significant amount of mental health hospitals. Majority of people who do in fact have mental illnesses are either sent to like a halfway house for a temporary period, or they're arrested. And I've seen this talking with police officers that, again, living in California, they can't do anything because what are they going to do? Put all these homeless people in prison, in jail? They don't have space for them. And so it's interesting too that insanity as a term has sort of fallen out of. I have an article from the American Psychiatric Association. They don't even use the term insanity anymore. And insanity is only used in a legal sense regarding somebody's ability to be guilty of a crime. So the public sphere is now an insane asylum. And when we look at social media, when we look at, again, censorship, you're not allowed to speak the truth. You're not allowed to say sane things like men and women should be together, that nuclear families are good, that strong traditional men are positive for society. These things can get you in trouble. And this is indicative of an insane society. The average IQ, I have an article on the average IQ is on the decline. This is the first time in human history. And this was a study actually also done in Norway, which is not obviously in America. And they're experiencing the same thing, that the average IQ for the first time is declining. Now, there's something called the Flynn effect, and that had to do with each generation increasing in overall IQ, which has been a historical trend since the IQ test has been established. However, since the beginning of like the mid 90s to then the 2000s, it sort of stagnated, and now it's seeing a precipitous decline in intelligence. This is all obviously constructed, and the effect of social media, I'm sure, has a major impact on this. And I have an article on social media directly highlighting that it increases things that are related to mental illness, depression, and anxiety, overall mental distress, overall fear about the world. And so psychosis is also tied with an irrational fear of threat, or an irrational fear of threat. And I can't help but think that we are living through a mass political psychosis, right? If we look at Trump derangement syndrome and all these people that, you say a halfway decent thing and you're labeled as a Nazi right now, this is a form of psychosis. The inability to actually see reality and live in a fantasy world of threats, this is psychotic behavior. And again, I'm not the biggest Trump supporter. There's a lot of things that I don't like. And I totally agree that he's a megalomaniac and he's narcissistic. He's egotistical. And he's certainly not the most erudite person we could elect for the job. However, there are benefits to him being sort of non-politically correct and of that nature. Certainly, he sort of has a masculine persona about him that still is appealing to us that have any sort of traditional leanings. But when we look at mass political psychosis, I mean, psychosis is the inability to distinguish, again, reality from fantasy, and the inability to actually perceive actual threats. And so we're seeing a massive amount of people in this country with the inability to actually perceive who the threats are. We're seeing crime all over the place. Again, related to something that I've been looking at is the development of training camps here in the United States that various, specifically Muslims. There was, again, I was talking with one of my premium members, and there's one there in Tennessee that is about 100 acres, and they're doing military drills and such. And yet the threat are Trump supporters. The threat is MAGA. The threat is white supremacy. This is psychotic. When we look at, various crimes that have been committed against certain groups of people, and the explanation is, oh, well, we can't look at it through a certain spectrum of color or anything like this because that would be racist. And so therefore, we don't need to evoke justice in certain degrees, right? And so you look at everybody calling everybody Nazis, and this is also on the rise now. It's something I talked about last night with Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro. Certainly there's a growing split within the conservative party or conservative movement, however you want to describe what that thing is. Obviously, many people have different definitions of what it is. But even Charlie Kirk today started to highlight who actually owns many of the NGOs and many of the groups that have promoted like anti-white racism. Now, that is an ability to accurately describe some of the actual threats that are facing us. But that seems to be incapable to be seen by a vast swath of the American populace. Furries, again, when I show you some of these videos, you're not going to believe what people are doing. And historically, these people would have been identified as, hey, you have a mental illness. You have a problem. We need to talk to you. You need to, again, be relegated into a sort of confine. And so, in like an adverse understanding, historically, mental institutes were a way to relegate insane people or people with significant mental illness into a place in which they can actually be helped and treated, and they can't harm other people. If anything, they can only harm themselves. But now, since we've seen the deinstitutionalization of the Western world, because this is a phenomenon all across European nations and, of course, America and Canada, that now they're out on the streets, they're out on the loose. And we look at the elites of our countries, and then they live in gated communities. They live in the exclusion, right? It's almost like the inverse, that we then are living in an insane asylum. Our culture, our societies are becoming insane, and they're filled with insane people. And meanwhile, those that are allowing to happen, just like we just saw with Governor Newsom of California. I've been to San Francisco. I lived in Berkeley for multiple years, and it was filthy. There were syringes everywhere. There's literally an app for when you go to San Francisco to avoid human feces. And within a matter of a day or two, he's able to clean up the entire city, demonstrating that the government, if they really wanted to clean things up, they could, but they don't, and they don't want to. And I think that's all deliberate, obviously. And so as they then make our societies more violent, less safe, well, they themselves can be relegated back into their exclusive neighborhoods and homes, of which is we're seeing a major divide in wealth, which is escalating this process. So I argue that social media is in fact spreading the contagion. Social media, propaganda, fake news, all this different stuff is real, and it's actually affecting the mental health of people, and it's leading people into a psychotic state of mind. Those who are truly persecuted are ignorant of the actual persecution. We just saw, I don't know if you guys saw today, that the J6 tapes were released. And what happened? We saw that those J6 protesters were led in by the police. They were nonviolent. They were actually fairly respectful, and they were having conversations with the police in the tapes. Yet we were told this was an event equivalent to 9/11, an inability to see reality, an inability to actually perceive threats. And I just did a stream again last night talking about Douglas Mackey, who's being sent to federal prison for a meme of Hillary Clinton during the 2016 presidential election. Those are real threats. The government is a real threat to a certain group of people within the United States, and yet the opposing group are the ones that are living in terror, afraid that they are the ones that are going to be the victims of violent crime, or again, the clampdown. If Trump was to get president, we're going to turn into the Third Reich. This is insanity. And so I want to lead you through, again, various articles and videos today to try to discuss this. But I think what we're witnessing is a incredible, again, breakdown in mental health. And Christ is the one that saves us. And I speak for myself, but I'm sure that many people would agree that as we become more Christian, as we become closer to Christ, I know myself, I've never been more sure of who I am. I was, again, throwing away a bunch of clothes the other day and going through my, again, closet, stuff that's been there forever. And I'm seeing stuff that I used to wear, stuff that, old stuff. And it forced me to begin to think about how I kept wanting to, again, these are like large Jordan t-shirts and stuff like this. And thinking about who I thought I was or who I wanted to be back in high school, and how I'm so different now, but now I found who I am. And I think this is related to, again, our relationship with Christ and God. And as we get closer to Christ, we can see things more clearly and more clearly and more clearly, because that's what he does. He heals the blind, and you and I are blind, and we need him to, again, rub his spittle and dirt into our eyes so that we can have eyes to see and ears to hear. And so, as our country's losing Christ, as our country's losing its Christian faith, it's hard not to notice the tremendous ramp up in insanity. So smash that like, guys. We got a pretty fun stream. We got a lot to get into tonight. So thank you all for being here. Just want to do a quick housekeeping on a few different things, then we'll get straight into actually some funny videos. We're going to start with some TikTok videos. So it's going to be very interesting, funny, I would argue, but could be worrisome depending on how you perceive it. But anyways, one of the best ways that you can support my work is become a website member. And for a $5 a month, you can have access to an exclusive video library. And you can do so with this link right here. I would greatly appreciate that. We have a fitness membership that meets the first Monday of every month. It's an accountability group for various Christians who are interested in fitness lifestyle. What we do in the fitness group is we go over our each month, we rate ourselves and grade ourselves in multiple different facets: our diets, strength and strength training, core and flexibility, and then lifestyle and business. And we talk about our lives, and we talk about what we did, what we didn't do, and describe our goals and what we're going to do for the next month. So if that's something you're interested in, become a fitness member. Or if you want to have that plus 2 private Zoom meetings every month, become a premium member. You can do so with that link right there. Also, if anybody wants to sign up for a one-on-one session, you can do so with this link right here. If you want to get into a private Zoom meeting and talk about any topic that your heart desires, we can do that as well. And if anybody wants to sponsor a stream, we got a few sponsored streams that are going to be coming in the next week or so. You can sign up and purchase a sponsored stream, and we can then talk privately about the topic. I'd be happy to do that as well. Regarding purchasing some merch, don't forget that we got merch over at the website as well as on YouTube. So you can go over to the store on my YouTube channel and purchase something there. Get you something for the winter time. We got, again, this is like a Columbia fleece jacket with the Calvary cross right here. Might be something you're interested in. This is sewn into the fabric. So with a little Church of the Eternal logo right on the sleeve. That might be something you're interested in. I don't know, but that's a great way to support the channel. And then last but not least, if anybody's in the market for some Orthodox merchandise, feel free to check out orthodoxdepot.com. Orthodoxdepot.com. They sell icons, incense, prayer ropes, necklaces, all types of stuff. And if you use promo code COTEL, you'll get 10% off, and you'll help me out as well. So that's another way that you can help us out. So thank you guys for that. All right. Now let me show you guys some video, and you tell me if this looks like it's sane or insane. Okay, let me find, bam, that. Okay, here we go. All right. So here we go. There's the first one. We're going to go through a series of videos here that I want to show you guys, but I just want to show you stuff that has been trending on social media. Here are a couple people who are minorly part of the furry community. You can see the dog collar around this woman, and just see how they interact here.
You bitch. No. Yes. No. Yes.
Okay, we're gonna stop it there. But I got more. Check this one out. This is of a recent video
going on?
Of a woman who gets pulled over. She is drunk driving, and you tell me if you think this woman is sane or not.
Nothing.
Why are you driving in the wrong way of traffic?
No, I just got changed around. I just moved here like 2 months ago.
Okay.
I just got changed around.
Okay. Do you understand what's going on, though?
Yes.
You're going into oncoming traffic.
I know, and I just... decided that it was better just to turn around and be like, thanks.
Okay,
But I'm sorry. I just have like really bad social anxiety and stuff.
I get you.
I don't want to step out whenever you're asking for stuff.
Okay, well, we're past that. Just go ahead and step out.
As an Indigenous person, and
Right back, please. Miss Perry? Am I?
well, I'm non-binary, so
Okay. What do you go by?
it's Kai.
How can I refer to you tonight? Kai? Okay. Hey, I'm smelling alcohol.
No,
How much have you consumed tonight?
like probably through drink.
I need to run you through some tests right now. Stand facing me, please.
But I just want you to know that I also have very bad social anxiety.
You and me both.
Okay.
Okay. Any recent head trauma, traumatic brain injuries, anything I need to know about?
Mental, yes.
Focus on my finger, please.
I am. You're just like trying to intimidate me.
I don't know how I'm trying to do that. This is the test.
As you know, as an Indigenous person, and there's a bunch of going around, I'm sorry, but it's just for me to be on my toes.
I get you.
Can you remember that I told you that I'm non-binary?
Yeah, I'll try my hardest. I'll refer to you as Kai, right?
Yes.
Perfect. I need to know if you have any injuries or anything that would prevent you from doing a standard walk or a turn tonight.
Mental health.
Any physical injuries?
Mental, yeah. But no, I'm just saying.
Okay.
Mental, PTSD, depression, anxiety.
I get you.
What else do you want?
Now with your right foot, place it in front of your left in a heel-to-toe touching manner with your arms by your side, just like this, ma'am.
Can you not call me ma'am, please?
I'm trying my hardest.
Okay, well,
Okay.
it means a lot to me.
I'm trying my
I don't
hardest.
feel like a man, so
Okay.
it's kind of triggering.
Right foot in front of your left. Nope. Go back.
I'm sorry, but the whole man thing, just like,
I apologize. Let's see if we can move forward from it. You have 0 questions?
no, but I just want to tell you that I suffer from really bad anxiety, especially with generational trauma and PTSD around white people. And
This white girl says she has PTSD and trauma from being around white people. Again, what did I talk about? Psychosis. We're going to look into the definitions here in a second. It's the inability to accurately perceive threats, living in a fantasy, unable to actually distinguish what's real from what is perceived in a sort of fictitious manner. This is mentally insane.
thoughts, like, it's just,
I'm going to speak with you right over here, okay?
no,
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead and place your hands behind your back.
don't, dude.
Don't make it hard.
Please.
Don't make it hard.
No,
No. You're going to get a resistance.
dude,
You're going to get a
I
resistance. Okay?
don't.
Don't resist.
Don't.
Listen to me. Don't resist.
Don't. You're being
Come
a
here.
white man and
Come here.
don't. I followed all of your shit. Like, as an Indigenous person, like, you guys. You guys are scaring me.
There's nothing to be afraid of.
Yes, there is. It's going.
So that's just again one instance. We got multiple videos to check out here, but I see we got a super chat I want to address. Shout out to my sister, Slow Boy Whiteboard. She says, saying we live in an insane asylum. Let me pull it up real quick. Shout out to Slow Boy Whiteboard. God bless you, Kristen, you and your family. Hope you guys are doing well. She says, saying we live in an insane asylum is actually backwards in its true meaning. We need asylum from the insane running the streets in the world. Yeah, that's actually, yeah, I agree with you. I actually agree with you. We need asylum from it, but it seems like the elites have chosen asylum from the rest of us. And so in a way, we have been put and relegated into the insane ward. It sure feels like it, but great point. Great point, Kristen. Thank you very, very much for that. And we got a couple super chats over on the Dono chat. So if anybody wants to support, feel free to use Dono chat or Streamlabs. Over on Dono chat, we have a $5 super chat by Joe Biden Werewolf. He says, have you ever seen the Neon Genesis Evangelion, and would you consider doing a live stream on it? No, I'm not familiar with that, but I can look it up later tonight, Joe Biden Werewolf. Thank you for that. I'll look into it, and maybe I will do a live stream on it. I'm just not familiar with it. And then Bond Jovi 1912, thank you so much, throws in a generous $50 super chat and says, I'm living in a small town outside of Asheville, North Carolina. I've been there. And the city started busing in homeless folks, and it's a sad state of affairs. Yeah. And unfortunately, Asheville, North Carolina is also incredibly liberal in the sense that it's like a new age haven. When I was there, there was like tons of sort of new age spirituality and shops to go into and stuff like that. So again, it makes sense why, unfortunately, a beautiful state like North Carolina is being, again, infiltrated by insanity, if you will. Unfortunate. And then we got a dollar sent in by the Dr. Vagisil. Let me pull this down. He throws in $1 over on the Streamlabs and says, the logismi keep attacking, but without godly humbleness, you don't have the strength to win. That is true. That is absolutely true. And if you are under a real demonic attack, I mean, without an understanding of transcendence, or at least a God to orient yourself towards, it's going to be hard to deal with that, I would argue. So, yeah, great point, Dr. Vagisil. I appreciate that. And again, we're seeing the same people that I would argue are certainly exhibiting forms of insanity are the same ones that would characterize you as being dumb and superstitious for believing in God or the resurrection or whatever it may be. So ironic, to say the least. Okay, back to what we got going here in regards to these videos. So check some of this stuff out, guys. Here's another one. This is an article, again, another thought-provoking article, is Zoophilia is Morally Permissible by Fira Benesto. It's a pseudonym, which is just out in the current issue of, again, this is an academic journal, supposed to be an academic journal of controversial ideas. Here, let me pull it up for you guys. And that's this right here, Journal of Controversial Ideas, an open access journal. Zoophilia is morally permissible. Here's the abstract of the article. As one of our most deeply entrenched social taboos, zoophilia is widely considered to be wrong, and having sex with animals is illegal in many countries. Yeah, rightfully so. In this article, I would like to go against this de facto consensus and argue that zoophilia is morally permissible. This would have major implications for how we legally and socially deal with zoophilia. Yeah, I'm going to say the person is insane. They can't even distinguish appropriate sexual partners without thinking that animals would be beneficial. Unreal. Here is the one that I wanted to show you guys in regards of this girl dressed as a pig. So check this out and let me know what you guys think about this.
My boyfriend just got home. My boyfriend.
Do you think I'm beautiful?
Yes, I do.
Oh. Do you want some mud? It actually feels kind of nice.
Oh, okay, actually.
Do you think I'm beautiful? Yes, I do. What? What did we just watch? Absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. The fact that this is growing phenomenon is worrisome. Here's a man that was recorded on the subway in New York who has an invisible baby that he is coddling and petting of some sort. This, again, this is right out in the open. This is a man on the subway. Making baby noises. Here is this video was going around, making its round around TikTok. We can actually go to this guy's channel. He is quite popular in the, here he is right here.
As a bird, I love to drink water out of a hamster water bottle because it. As a bird, I love to drink water out of it.
Let's see, how big is his TikTok? I really want to know. Yeah, 587,000.4 followers, over 17.1 million likes. Check out this guy.
This is my first time going to FurryCon, and I am jumping with joy because there's going to be so many cute bakas there. There's also going to be so many other kittens there, and you guys know I get super territorial when I see other cute kittens because it's not fair. I need to be the cutest of them all. I'm also super excited because there's going to be so much free cat food and kitty treats, and you guys know I love to eat my kitty treats. And since I'm new to the furry world, I'm super excited to see all the other furries in their new fursuits. Oh, I'm going to act up so hard when I see all these cute furries. I'm just praying that my ex Baka doesn't go, because if he goes, oh, there's going to be a big kitten brawl. This FurryCon is all about love and peace. I want to have the best of time meeting all the other furries. Oh, I'm also super excited because this is going to be the first time I'm speaking on a panel in a room full of furries and other Bakas too. I'm quite nervous, but my mommy's giving me some catnip so I can calm down and not have high kitten anxiety when I'm speaking on my panel. I'm going to be doing a story time on the first Baka that I ever met and how he forever changed my life. I want to look like I'm already blushing when I'm talking to the other Bakas, so I want to use a lot of blood.
North of says, is it normal to feel sick to my stomach watching these people? Yes. Yes, it absolutely is. And so I apologize if anybody is vomiting in their mouth. I apologize. But again, we're only going to watch a few of these, and then I want to move into some actual articles discussing the premise of, again, today's stream. But yeah, what the F is a Baka? I don't know. I didn't do the research on that. I assume a Baka is, yeah, Bacchus. It might as well be. I assume a Baka is like the owner of the cat or something. And so he thinks of himself as a cat. He's clearly trans of some sort, going to FurryCon and looking for a Baka. Baka is Japanese for stupid. I did not know that. It's a Japan's bad word for damn, I think, is Baka. Okay. Did not know, was not interested in even looking that up. But thank you guys, for those who are familiar with maybe the culture that these people are dealing with. I had no idea.
Blush. I feel like blush just signifies cuteness. My ex Baka really liked blush, and sometimes I get really emotional when I use a lot of it. My daddy kitten told me to be strong, and that's what I'm gonna do because I'm a strong kitten. Oh, really hope there's a lot of furry merchandise there because, oh no, I don't even have my Baka's card. How am I gonna buy merchandise? I'm certain I'll find a caring Baka who will spoil me at the convention. You know my soulmate Baka is out there somewhere. I just have to dig a little to find him. If you're going to FurryCon and Flop Tropica, definitely come up and say hi to me because we can do a good ooh together. All right, you guys, my oobies outside, in and out. I'm going to ooh out, and I'll see you all at the convention.
What the hell is that? I do not know. But again, looking at America as an insane society, I grabbed this yesterday. A gynecologist who caused a baby to be decapitated during a botched birth is cleared to return to work. Meanwhile, government drops a doctor who says gender is given at birth. Again, so now let's get into some of the stuff that I want to highlight. what exactly is insanity? And of course, this is just Wikipedia. I'm just giving you a quick understanding, but is behaviors performed by certain abnormal mental or behavioral patterns. Insanity can manifest as violations of social norms, maybe dressing like a pig and rolling around in mud in your bathroom, or perceiving yourself as a cat and looking for your daddy cat or what the hell? I don't know. Conceptually, mental insanity also is associated with biological phenomenon of contagion, that mental illness is in fact infectious. And here is a medical article that I have, that the social contagion of mental health, evidence from college roommates. And what this article shows is that social interaction, here, let's go start here. This paper examines the contagion of mental health. In a sense, this is one of the most meaningful forms that a spillover effect could take, because mental health is a fundamental indicator of well-being among children and young adults. Okay, yada, yada, yeah, they're not going to be suited. Recent studies in the medical literature conclude that mental health may be highly contagious, much like infectious disease. And so when we look at, again, TikTok, I got tons of stuff. Not that like, here's this guy here again. We don't need to watch any more of that, but look at these of these furries, right?
Fine, I guess you are my little pog champ. Come here. Fine.
Unreal. So we're witnessing again the contagion of mental illness move around our society to a degree that we've never seen before. Super chat just came in from our sister Tatiana, throws in $10. Thank you so much, Tatiana. She says, brother, thank you for today's topic. I've been thinking about all this insanity and how it's actually spiritual warfare. It absolutely is. You articulate again something I've been thinking about for a while. Well, thank you so much, Tatiana, for the super chat. I do appreciate that. But one of the things that I didn't know until actually diving into the research for this stream is that mental illness is in fact a contagion, and there's multiple historical examples to signify that sort of spread of insanity. And there's a recent movie, I couldn't even get through it because it was so demonic, but it was like I think it was named Smile, and it had to do with like people like giving these like crazy smiles and then they try to kill people, and it's like that reminded me of the sort of social contagion that we're seeing around our societies today. Maybe you guys agree or disagree. Some of you may have seen that movie. I did not. I watched the beginning. I was like, okay, I'm done with this one. But yeah, Bill Hicks absolutely highlights what I'm talking about is church gives the immunity, because you can't, again, if you have a spiritual father like a priest, you're not going to be able to just go about society acting like you're a furry or an animal without people saying, dude, what? And you look at the lack of strong, Smile was a movie. Yeah, that was the movie I was talking about. But it is also sort of like a social contagion there of like some type of mental derangement of some sort. And it's like we're seeing this play out in our society today in real time. So continuing on here, this is what I thought was really interesting. So now mental instability and insanity is now a legal defense. And if we go over here, let me see if I can find it. Yeah. So I went to the American Psychological Association to see, well, what do they say about insanity? Oh, well, insanity is now in law. And so they don't even use insanity as a clinical diagnosis. A law, it's a condition of the mind that renders a person incapable of being responsible for their criminal acts. Are we seeing an inability to hold people responsible in our society? Sure feels that way. Again, when we look at the crimes of, again, the people that are running our government, that's one thing. And yet then they're trying to persecute others in our society that aren't performing criminal acts. Defendants who are found to be not guilty by reason of insanity, therefore lack criminal responsibility for their conduct. Whether a person is insane in this legal sense is determined by judges and juries, not psychologists or psychiatrists. Numerous legal standards for determining criminal responsibility, the central issue in an insanity defense. Oh, okay. So again, and this is just quick, you can go use the etymology. Maybe we can do that right now, but sane derives, as I said, from the Latin sanus, meaning healthy. And so it was often translated to mean a healthy mind and a healthy body. And is that not Christianity, right? We venerate Christ, the incarnate God who rose from the dead and ascended into eternity, into heaven, and sits at the right hand of the Father. That is a human body, and our bodies have been sanctified through the incarnation. And this is the process of theosis. And so the life that our orthodoxy calls us to is one of pure sanity. It's one of pure mental health, spiritual health. And of course, we then maintain and preserve and care for our bodies as a spiritual duty. From this perspective, insanity can be considered as poor health of the mind, not necessarily of the brain as an organ. And you think about, again, the mind, logismy, demonic activity. This is the forefront of our society. What we're seeing with these furries and stuff, this isn't just, hey, people feel disenfranchised by society. I mean, that is certainly contributing to it. And the inability, for example, to millennials to buy homes, and we're never going to be able to. This is part of a social control. And of course, people act out their anxieties and their depression and their distress due to the state of our society in various ways. But it's causing people who don't have a moral compass and don't have God to look to become insane. Another Latin phrase related to our concept of sanity is compos mentis, sound of mind. And a euphemistic term for insanity is non-compos mentis. Okay, so that led me to go over here to begin to look at psychosis. What exactly is a psychosis? And it's a condition of the mind, so related to insanity, that results in difficulties in determining what is real and what is not real. Symptoms may include delusions, hallucinations, maybe that you're a woman and you have a female penis. Additional symptoms are incoherent speech and behavioral that is inappropriate for a given situation. There may also be, sleep problems and all this different stuff. But you start thinking about, again, the psychosis that is present in our society. Delusions. Psychosis may involve delusional beliefs. A delusion is a fixed, false, idiosyncratic belief, which does not change even when presented with incontrovertible evidence to the contrary. Now, this is where I was talking about the political psychosis that I think we're existing in, because look at, again, the Russia hoax, Trump derangement syndrome, the narrative of white supremacy as the greatest threats in our society. And this isn't just relegated to furries. These are extreme examples, right? These are almost humorous examples of what we're talking about. But you know, and I know, we've met people that are living in an alternate reality. And of course, the media is perpetuating this sort of propagandistic mental assault on people. And gaslighting is one of them, right? Gaslighting, convincing somebody to no longer believe in their own rational faculties, but to give over their rational belief system to an authority, a system, another person who's abusive to them. That's what gaslighting is. And our society is filled with gaslighting. Delusions are context and cultural dependent, a belief in which inhibits critical functioning and is widely considered delusional in one population may become common, even adaptive in another, and in the same population at a later time. Since normative views may contradict available evidence, prevalence of schizophrenia, related to bipolar disorder, right? And again, I got articles highlighting that all this stuff is on a dramatic increase within Western civilization, but again, more specifically America, due to our big pharma running our government and being a hidden hand, as we know. DSM-5 characterizes certain delusions as bizarre if they are clearly impossible with the surrounding cultural context. The concept of bizarre delusions has many criticisms, the most prominent being judging its presence is not highly reliable or even among trained. Whatever. So moving forward here, here's psychiatric hospitals, and these have been on a dramatic decline. So the hospitals were specialized treatment for mental disorders, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, eating disorders, dissociative identity disorder, and major depressive episodes, and others. Well, unfortunately, this is what I was talking about with the process called deinstitutionalization. Most people aren't aware of this, but it is the process of replacing long-stay psychiatric hospitals with less isolated community health services for those diagnosed with mental disorder or development disabilities. In the late 20th century, it led to the closure of many psychiatric hospitals as patients were increasingly cared for at home in halfway houses or clinics, in regular hospitals or just not at all. Deinstitutionalization works in two ways. The first focuses on reducing the population size of mental institutions by releasing patients, shortening their stays, and reducing both admissions and readmission rates. The second focuses on reforming psychiatric care to reduce or avoid encouraging feelings of dependency, hopelessness, and other behaviors. So the modern deinstitutionalization movement was made possible by the discovery of psychiatric drugs. So I'm going to show you guys, again, the dramatic increase of the use of psychiatric drugs in America. 1 in 5 American women are on psychiatric drugs today. And this is on a rate that is increasing. So this was the study that I'll show you guys is from 2020, and it highlights that it is going up precipitously every year. In the mid-20th century, which could manage psychotic episodes and reduce the need for patients to be confined or restrained. Another major impetus was a series of socio-political movements that campaigned for patient freedom. Lastly, there are financial imperatives and whatnot. Well, again, I obviously believe this was a detriment. And so we scroll down here to criticisms. Where is that? Where is that? Here we go. Other criticisms. So like this guy, criticisms of deinstitutionalization take a number of forms. Some, like E. Fuller Torrey, defend the use of psychiatric institutions, I do, and conclude that deinstitutionalization was a move in the wrong direction entirely. No, we began to mass medicate our society as opposed to actually deal with and relegate those that have actual mental disorders and try to help them. Torrey has opposed deinstitutionalization in principle, arguing that people with mental illness will be resistant to medical help due to the nature of their conditions. These views have made him a controversial figure in psychiatry. He believes that reducing psychiatrists' powers to use involuntary commitment led to many patients losing out on treatment. Another former critique argues that while deinstitutionalization was a move in the right direction, it had laudable goals. Many shortcomings in the execution stage have made it unsuccessful thus far. New community services developed as alternatives for institutionalization. They leave patients still dependent still on the support of mental health care without clear evidence of providing adequate treatment and support. So again, you get the point. You guys can look this stuff up yourself. And so we look at psychopathy then. This is another form of mental illness, and this is one related to psychosis, but not exactly the same thing as psychosis. Psychopathy, or somebody who is a psychopath, is dealing with a mental condition that is characterized by persistent antisocial behavior, impaired empathy and remorse, and bold, disinhibited, and egotistical traits. Now, I would argue when we look at people like, again, and these are just, the people that are presented in front of us, the deep state, but like people like Hillary Clinton or the Bidens or whatnot, Joe Biden's not running anything in our country. And Hillary Clinton is often a scapegoat for larger problems in our society, but I would argue what we're seeing in regards to the insanity of our country, if we're going to anthropomorphize America as actually becoming more and more insane, is that we're allowing ourselves to be led by insane people. And so Donald Trump is many things, but I don't consider him to be insane. And so it's interesting, again, due to psychosis, the inability to distinguish what is real from what is imaginary or a fantasy, and the inability to actually perceive actual threats to oneself is tied to the fact that these same people are voting for psychopaths. This is interesting, too, because one of the books that I wanted to highlight is Michel Foucault, the famous French scholar of the mid-20th century, was a homosexual, and he wrote a famous book called Madness and Civilization, and I'll describe it here. It's an examination by Michel Foucault on the evolution and the meaning of madness in the cultures of laws, politics, philosophy, and medicine in Europe from the Middle Ages until the end of the 18th century. And it's a critique of the idea of history and the historical method. Okay, whatever. Well, in it, he begins to argue for basically the definitions of insanity were used to oppress certain people of our society. Well, Michel Foucault was an outright pedophile. He actually advocated for pedophilia, and he had young boys, and he died from getting AIDS in bathhouses and San Francisco when he came to the U.S. and actually was teaching at UC Berkeley. So you tell me, is it interesting or not that a man who is promotive of pedophilia, promotive of his sexual relationships with young boys, dies due to his inability to not engage in extreme sexual relations with people in bathhouses, to he ends up dying from AIDS? Now, again, we can get into Fauci, HIV, and all this different stuff in regards to AIDS and the AIDS epidemic. I agree with you there. I'm totally with you. Well, this article right here, this comes again from the National Library of Medicine and highlights the consequences of the trend of decline regarding mental health institutes. Insane asylums began to decline around the turn of the 20th century as patients with incurable illnesses filled them. Asylums became warehouses for people who could not be maintained anywhere else. And this gives a sort of description of the St. Louis Insane Asylum, which exemplified this trend and decline. Overcrowding and lack of funding. I don't know if you guys just saw that the Pentagon just happened to miss their audit. They just failed their audit again, which they've done multiple times, of another $3.8 trillion. Now, I believe before 9/11, September 10th, that what didn't the Pentagon say that they lost, like, they couldn't account for like $3 billion? Well, the latest one that was just a couple days ago, they couldn't account for $3.8 trillion. And we can't even fund institutes to help people with mental illness. Seems a bit strange to me. Again, we don't have to read this paper per se, but I just wanted to highlight. So again, why the decline in asylums? Despite the rise of psychiatry as a specialty, publicly funded psychiatric hospitals were in decline in the late 19th century, whereas general hospitals were becoming more modern and research-oriented in their practice. The opposite was happening to psychiatric hospitals. Mental hospitals in the years around 1900 were the last resort before the poorhouse. Large numbers of state mental hospital inmates suffered from diseases such as senile debility and neurosyphilis, in addition to diagnosis of such depression, mania, paranoia. State hospitals offered little treatment. And I'm not here to say that, an insane asylum was a retreat for people, but we could certainly deal morally with people with these mental illnesses in a much better fashion than we're doing now. We got a super chat. Shout out to James Johnson, sends in $20. Thank you so much, James Johnson. He says, the book American Psychosis by Fuller is the history of how the last law JFK signed deinstitutionalized the asylums. Psychoanalysts were supposed to run America. His advisors were commie and regretted the law. Interesting. Very interesting. So thank you for that, James Johnson. I wasn't aware, and I've never read the book American Psychosis. It maybe would have been beneficial for the stream, but I can only do so much. Let me just check while we're taking a stop here real quick to see if anybody sent anything over on the dono chat. Yes, Blue Skittle sends in $5. No comment. Thank you so much, Blue Skittle. God bless you. Truly appreciate the support. And it looks like nothing over on Streamlabs, but yeah, great point, James. I wasn't aware of that at all. But again, you can see, yes, funding was low, but the deinstitutionalization of the Western world, I think, has been a tragedy in many regards. So this leads to the next article, which I already highlighted, that discussed that mental illness and mental health is, in fact, evidence of a social contagion. And where was it? Let me find out real quick. Okay, so our findings are consistent with no significant overall contagion of mental health and no more than the small contagion effects of specific mental happiness. Here it is. Happiness does not exhibit a significant contagion, whereas poor mental health does. It does. It is highly contagious. Measured as general psychological distress, depression, and anxiety exhibit some evidence of contagion, although the depression contagion is only significant for men. These results, particularly for subgroups, should be viewed as exploratory rather than confirmatory, given the potential for type 1 errors and yada, yada, yada. Okay, but very interesting findings there. So moving on, here's an article by NPR from 2017 on how the loss of U.S. psychiatric hospitals led to a mental health crisis. And again, we're not going to read the whole thing, but The disappearance of long-term healthcare facilities and psychiatric beds has escalated over the past decade, sparked by a trend toward deinstitutionalization of psychiatric patients in the 1950s and 60s, says Dominic Sisti, director of Scattergood Program for Applied Ethics and Behavioral Care at the University of Pennsylvania. State hospitals began to realize that individuals who were there probably could do well in the community, he says in Here and Now. It was well intended, but what I believe happened over the past 50 years is that there's been such an evaporation of psychiatric therapeutic spaces that we now lack a sufficient number of psychiatric beds. Yeah, our country doesn't even have the ability to deal with the mental crisis, and that's why they're out on the street, right? That's exactly, again, the point is that our public sphere is now the insane asylum, is what I'm arguing. Again, if you guys want to read these articles here, I'll share them all in the live chat. So let me put this in the live chat. You guys can read some of these stuff in its fullness if you desire. We had a lot to get through. Many individuals who really do require intensive psychiatric care find themselves homeless or more and more in prison, Sisti says. Much of our mental health care now for individuals with serious mental illness has been shifted to correctional facilities, of which are overcrowded. And now we're seeing places like California, because of overcrowding in prisons, they won't even prosecute crimes like theft under $1,000 worth. And so we've all seen the videos. People go into CVS, Walgreens, the CVS. It's interesting. The CVS that I used to go to in Berkeley, I've seen videos where everything is under plastic. That was not like that when I was there in 17, 18 and 2019. So, and I visited in 16. So it was, the Bay Area was already like it was. I wasn't Orthodox yet. I wasn't Christian. I didn't have the eyes to see or the ears to hear yet, but it was not like it is now. Now the Bay Area is just run amok. And again, it tied to that it was the first week that I moved to Berkeley. My car, I was moving stuff out of my car. I had stuff in my trunk and I left my trunk open and my doors was unlocked. My car, so I lived behind a woman's house. She was a former professor at the university. I was very lucky to be able to rent a sort of small little studio apartment behind her house. And so you have to walk around the house and get back to the car, which is right there on a street. And it's up in the hills of Berkeley. This is not like out in the open or anything like that. Within just a matter of minutes, I was taking stuff, carrying stuff out of my car, walked to my apartment, came back from my apartment to my car, and it was already ransacked. Somebody had gone through everything in my car, stole everything that was out of my trunk, and everything that was in my glove box. Luckily, I didn't have any money in there. They stole all my sunglasses, and I had clothes and stuff in the trunk. Stole all of it. I called the police, say, hey, somebody just stole stuff in my car. He said, yeah, we've had 40 cases this week. We really can't do anything with it. What? Yeah, we don't really come to, petty theft, or if somebody breaks in your car, we don't really deal with it. Sorry. What? The percentage of people with serious mental illness in prisons rose from 0.7% in 1980 to 21% in 2005, according to the Center of Prisoner Health and Human Rights. As a result, many people who experience serious mental health crisis end up in the emergency room, according to data from the National Hospital Ambulatory Medical Care Survey between 2001 and 2011. 6% of all emergency department patients had a psychiatric condition. Nearly 11% of all patients require transfer to another facility, but there are often no beds available. We are the wrong site for these patients, Dr. Thomas Kuhn, an associate professor of emergency medicine and pediatrics at Brown University, told NPR. Our crazy, chaotic environment is not a good place for them. So, okay. So I shared that link. You guys have seen that one. Here's the article I showed you guys. Zoophilia, morally permissible. This is insane. Here's an article. Again, recent article written this year, July of this year in 2023. What is furry sex? What? Furries are people who have an interest in anthropomorphic animals or animals with human qualities. Many furries create their own animal character known as their fursona, which functions as their avatar within furry communities. No, this is mental illness. While fursonas are each based on an animal, a dog, a cat, a reptile, a bird, a wild animal, and a mythical creature. They walk upright like humans do and often have cartoon-like appearances. Furries represent their personas through art, writing, online identities, and creations of fursuits, which are elaborate costumes depicting the individual's animal. Some fursuits are full costumes, while others are partial, including animal ears. The furry fandom thrives in online spaces, again, placing my argument that social media and the internet is spreading the contagion of mental illness. But many individuals also meet locally or nationally to engage with like-minded fans each year. Furry enthusiasts meet at conferences, and that is true. One time, it's been a few years since this happened, but I was downtown Indianapolis, and it was Comic-Con. And I guess Comic-Con and FurryCon are part of the same event or something. So you had all these people dressed up as like superheroes and Marvel figures. And then you had all these people in these freaking furry suits. It was my first time ever seeing all this stuff in person. And I mean, you laugh, you think it's funny, but at the same time, it's scary. It's scary to see what's going on. Super chat came in from Ostimus Prime. Thank you so much for the $10 super chat. He says, one of your older videos is what led me to orthodoxy. And I get a lot of funny reactions when asked what led me to orthodoxy. And I hit them with a video on the Luciferian roots of sexual androgyny. Yeah, that I remember that video. It was talking about how androgyny is always tied with a sort of spiritual worldview about pure unity, tied to presuppositions related to Neoplatonism and all this different stuff. But we can look to the figure of Baphomet, which was worshipped by the Knights Templar, sort of who got engaged in these sort of Gnostic mystical rites. And yeah, same old thing. And that's why, as a Christian, as an Orthodox Christian, again, I don't hate anybody. I don't hate the LGBTQ community. I do not hate these furries. I don't hate anybody who's in one of our videos today that we're going to be watching. But, you know, as an Orthodox Christian, man, God doesn't make mistakes. And if you're male or female, that's what your intended providence is. And so we're seeing now, I don't know if you guys have been witnessing this, but I've been seeing online a growth in the homosexual community, so gays and lesbians, actually becoming more and more critical of these sort of aberrant forms of sexuality, because they're like, hey, I'm a man, I want to be a man, I'm attracted to men, which again, it's gross, but you get the point. So there's real tensions there. And what's interesting about the transgender movement, which is almost a meme at this point, is they talk about how genitals do not affirm your sexual identity. Meaning if you have male genitals, that doesn't mean you're a man. But at the same time, they believe cutting them off or inverting them then reaffirms their identity, which then totally contradicts the statement in the first place, because it's insinuating that in fact your genitalia does affirm your sexual identity. Again, I digress. You guys get it. You get it. But Mr. Smirks throws in $5. He says, this is what happens when you fall away from the rational order, the logos. Absolutely. Absolutely, Mr. Smirks. I totally agree with that. And we're seeing this as, again, this is a mass contagion. And, you know, I don't know what's going to happen with like Generation Alpha. So, in fact, I have a video. Let me pull that up real quick. I have a video talking about Generation Alpha. This is the iPad generation. And I have one video, but I began to look on it. I didn't bookmark them like I did this one. But there's real concern with Generation Alpha because of their inability to have like normal social interactions. These are the iPad generation. This is the generation after Gen Z. So we already see Gen Z, dramatic increase in the identity of these various sexual identities or ways to express themselves. Well, I assume Gen Alpha is going to be even worse. Let me see if I can find that real quick. I had it bookmarked over on Twitter. Let me see. Oh, here it is. Yeah, check this out, guys. I need everybody else in my generation to promise. Let me just play this. So this is really interesting here, and again, tied to the social media and these generations. Like I'm convinced when I raise my children, they're not going to have an iPad. I'm going to deal with it old school. They're going to read books. I'm going to read books. Yeah, maybe it's going to be a lot more difficult because I'm not going to be able to, again, the parents come home, they put an iPad in the hands of their children and it pacifies them. So they're able to, you know, relax for the evening or whatnot. But listen to some of these firsthand accounts.
children. Please. I just saw a TikTok from some millennial, and she was like, here's a message to Gen Z. You might make fun of us, but watch out. We're raising the next generation, and they're gonna eat you up. Your kids can't read, okay? You're raising Gen Alpha. They're bizarre and terribly behaved. Y'all bred iPad children. You have been shoving media and screens in these kids' faces since birth. They probably have no imagination because their brain hasn't actually been forced to come up with any original thought. Gen Z, please, when we are older, don't give your kids iPads at the dinner table. If I'm older and I have my kids and I bring them to a restaurant and I see fellow parents at the table next to me and their kids have iPads at a restaurant in public, well, I'm gonna scream. Because what the hell is that? Can you not make your child behave for more than 5 seconds that they can live without an iPad for dinner? Can you not give your child enough attention and like actually converse with them and like teach them things and have conversations? Why do you have to just give them an iPad to make them shut up? Why are they even there then? What are you doing? What is your parenting style? People are gonna come at me and be like, oh, you're 21. What do you know about being a parent? I don't know. I look at kids and they're like terribly behaved. I saw a TikTok of a girl talking about how she was a summer camp for a bunch of like Gen Alpha kids. And they were like the most poorly behaved kids she's ever seen in their entire lives. We have to right a wrong, guys. We have to make our kids normal, please.
Majored in education for 1 semester and worked in childcare for about 8 or 9 years, and who has many younger relatives, I think I speak for many of us when I say that Gen Alpha, or the iPad kid generation, is so far an absolute terrifying nightmare to deal with. And I want to talk about this today. And I know people say this about every young generation. It's kind of like a rite of passage for aging, but it is an epidemic to the point where teachers who have taught their entire lives are just up and quitting their jobs now because they can't handle these kids anymore. And yes, of course, there are other issues like benefits and pay, but the main reason when polled for most teachers is the children's behavior of recent years. Main issues we're finding with Gen Alpha, which to be clear was born between 2010 and 2025, and most of their parents are either millennials or Gen Xers, is that they're having extreme social issues and they have like little to no mannerisms. The iPad kids are out of control. I'm not lying when I tell you, as someone who used to nanny for a lot of families, I have some crazy stories, but the families that were the easiest to manage were the families that extremely controlled screen time for their kids. I think a big issue is that these kids are using screens at a rate we've never historically seen before, and these parents are replacing like parenting and babysitters with iPads. Like even Gen Z didn't have this level of access to the internet quite. And we all know that all this screen time is bad for everyone in society, but we're directly seeing that in things like this generation as a whole is having reduced attention span and concentration. So that might be why like ADHD diagnoses seem to be going up and up. They spend less time socializing in person. And this one I've seen the most with the kids in my life is less development of creativity and imagination. Kids I've watched over the years have no interest in coloring and building, and they just want to sit on their iPads and watch Netflix and play apps and games. The worst families I ever had to nanny for were the families that allowed their kid like unregulated access to their iPads and whatnot because they just wanted to be on those 24/7, and it was a nightmare. These kids didn't want to go and play outside. They didn't do a lot of imagination play, and they never wanted to go and play with toys. They just wanted to sit and play on their apps. And I would watch them play on the apps just to see if it was really all that bad, but there was really like no creativity happening on those apps. And terrifyingly enough, if you tried to take this tech from these kids, they didn't know how to act. And I could always tell when a parent didn't have proper boundaries or anything, because if you try and take an iPad out of an iPad kid's hand, not only will they throw a tantrum so large, but they will start physically hitting you. And the first few times this happened whilst I was nannying families, I was amazed because like, who allows their kid to behave like this? Even as a child who would throw temper tantrums, like I knew that you would never put your hands on someone who at least wasn't immediate family. There were some kids that had no problem even straight up hitting me in my face. And I think a lot of the millennials that I work for really liked having me as a nanny because I would slowly try and like infiltrate my parenting style into their lives because I was around the family so much. Specifically, every day when one family came home from school, one was like 5 and the other was about 7, so they didn't really have homework ever. I would take all of the electronics and put it away, and tantrums would start. I'd say, that's fine, let it all out, let it all happen, do what you need to do here. But if it was a nice day out, I'd be like, okay, let's go outside. We'd all go outside. I would close and lock the door behind us and tell them, go play. You have tons of outdoor toys that you literally never touch. Or if it was cold outside, usually these kids had entire playrooms that went completely untouched because of these iPads. And I'd say, go play with your toys in the playroom. You have hundreds of toys, go and play with them. You will find something to do, I promise. And in 3 or 4 hours, when your parents are home, you get all of your tech back because they don't care. And yes, usually I would allow like 20 or 30 minutes of TV time after school sometimes to allow them to wind down and relax, because everyone needs to relax after a long day at work. Other than that, iPad games and movie nights were things that had to be earned by doing little chores or just helping out around the house, like every other family who was raised in the 90s and early 2000s would have done it. And if I was with the family long enough, I genuinely started to see improvements with the children to the point where the parents would see it too. And a few times in passing, I had parents be like, what are you doing? Like, they seem to just be behaving better. And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm raising your kids. Like, I'm teaching them about actions and consequences and how to handle their emotions properly. And listen, I'm all for handing a kid an iPad when you're out in public at lunch or whatever to coddle a public meltdown. Because you know what? We had these. This is what my mom would bring us to kind of babysit us when she's out in public, just trying to have a lunch with her friends. But this is not a 24/7 replacement for raising your child. So you know what? When I have kids, when Gen Z has kids, we're going on eBay. We're getting a 1998 LeapPad learning system. But I also think it's important to note that it's not the iPad's fault that kids are turning out this way. Historically, we've always blamed tech for issues in our children. At the end of the day, it is the parenting style and approach, or lack thereof, to blame, really. I'm not trying to mom shame or say this is easy, but we can do this. This has gotten out of hand.
I need everybody else in my...
So anyways, just wanted to highlight that again. There are massive generational differences, and I've noticed the exact same thing in regards to. I had very old school parents, and yeah, I'm 34, so I guess I'm old at this point. But when I see kids, and I can just see the generational differences and the ability to pay attention, the ability to have social, interactions. My parents were a bit older, so I was always exposed to older adult people, and I developed the ability to have conversations with them, and I can't help but think that is also influenced my ability for schooling and really what I do as a profession now, because I look at younger people and it's like, they can't read. They don't read. I just saw an article that they're taking out analog clocks in schools because Gen Z and Generation Alpha can't even read an analog clock. What is going on? Okay, so moving on here. Again, this is where then the American cities and the idea to get us on the grid, I think, plays a factor in this, because this was on furry. Again, then she goes into furry sex, of course. I just want to read this last paragraph. The community itself is known for its diversity and acceptance. 1/3 of the furry community identifies exclusively heterosexual, and furries are 5 times more likely to identify as LGBTQ than the general population. I wonder why. Oh, if you're interested in the furry community, you can explore these feelings in a number of ways. Literally telling people to have these furry fetishes. This is unreal. Oh, man. So anyways, moving on here, I want to talk a little bit about why cities are having a precipitous effect on the decline of mental health. Hold on. We got a super chat that came in, so I want to give credit to that real quick. Shout out to Frankie D. Frankie D throws in 2 super chats. Oh, 3 super chats. Let me pull them up and read them one at a time, Frankie D. First one, he throws in for $5, and he says, if we place this furry behavior on a spectrum, I see the star battles, the star cross country, a X-Man's X Comic Cons to be a similar vein. I even think sports and even becoming a car guy is part of an escape for more normal people in place of Christ. I get your point there, but I kind of disagree. Becoming a car guy and the ability to work on a car is masculine, and it's built of being in real life. So, and I personally like sports and I like cars. So I get your point there. I certainly see sports as being an escape. And this is, I would agree with you. So like one of the things that I do when I try to unload and relax, I'll watch like commentary on sports, usually football, something like that, or MMA or something of those natures, a little bit more masculine sports. We're seeing the feminization of sports, generally speaking, right? I mean, look at the NBA now, or the NFL now, it's totally being feminized. So I get your point, because I do think sports are an out for most people, but in the same way, I think they, in a way, they're also beneficial. I mean, when I think of the playing sports, for me, develop the discipline and the work ethic for the idea to become better at something. So I deliberately associate my willingness to read and do research all the time to a sort of innate teaching of my dad that I constantly got to practice and get better and better and better at something. But I do get your point. I do get your point. Frankie D throws in another one and says, I would say even the kind of car iconography that I've seen people have, I think is much more normal behavior. Yeah, exactly. So it looks like we agree. Not the same class as furry, but I do think that there are a lot of people who aren't reading the lives of the saints, but they know engines. Well, you know, yeah, I totally agree with you. I don't think many people read the lives of the saints, generally speaking, but I totally agree with you. That's where even my frustration, I was, again, when I decompress and watch some sports and I look at these sports analysts, whether it be, you know, Stephen A. Smith or whoever, and I'm thinking, gosh, you're getting all animated and, you know, and all heated and riled up talking about sports. And like, there's so much more important things going on in the country that no matter how much money they make, millions of dollars to be a sports analyst and you know, and commentator and talk about everything, I wouldn't even change my life for that. Even if they offered me millions of dollars. Yeah, I watch it once in a while, but it's so superficial for your career, and what you offer to society is a commentary on sports and that's it. I wouldn't want to be that person. Frankie D throws in another one, a third one. He says, let's see here. Go. I think that we live in a very insane world and men do not seek the church because in the West it had a certain history. So instead they retreat to sports or some kind of hobby. Hobbies are not bad, but many people do take it to the extreme. Yeah, I agree. And I certainly think Western Christianity has been problematic to people's attendance to church, generally speaking. But the thing about sports is that they are meritocratic. And so I'm all for more competition because competition is innately masculine. So like MMA, yeah, I really like the UFC. I'm a big UFC guy. I tend to watch all the fights. I love that because it's incredibly meritocratic, whether you're Khabib and, you know, in Dagestan or wherever you are or, you know, whoever, you get into a cage and you compete. And I think, again, sports are a good way for that. But we're seeing sports totally be hijacked. And I really feel that MMA and the UFC is probably the last bastion of truly masculine competition. And the violence sort of ingratiates that. So I don't know if you guys saw the video of Donald Trump, Kid Rock, Tucker Carlson, and Dana White, the last UFC fight. What was it? UFC 295. They come into the Kid Rock song American Badass, and it's all, again, again, people with more traditional values just generally like that type of stuff more. And the people who want participation trophies and the feminization of stuff, they're not going to like, again, the vibe of UFC and stuff like that. So I totally get your point, Frankie D. I also watch golf. I do like golf. I like playing golf, but I think we have the same opinion, Frankie D. I absolutely think cars and sports and material things are ways for people to escape the world. I do think, as you highlighted as well, they are much better than like furries, but I don't think many people are going deep enough to even care about God. And that is a form of insanity. I would argue that is absolutely another form of insanity. We got a super chat over on the Dono chat. Whoa. Shout out to, an anonymous super chatter. They just said, thank you. I appreciate your work. Send in $100. Thank you so much to the anonymous super chatter for the $100 super chat. Thank you, whoever you are. I assume you're a male. So thank you, brother, for the $100 super chat. I truly, truly appreciate that. And then Alex P just sent in $4 over on Dono chat. He says, do you think psychedelics can open yourself up to demons? And do you think weed/dabs can as well? Well, yes, I absolutely do. And I've talked about this extensively in regards to psychedelics dissolve boundaries. And I think they dissolve boundary. And if you're interested in this topic, I highly recommend you going and checking out my recent conversation with Father Moses McPherson. He's a Rocor priest down in Texas, and he himself had a history of the use of psychedelics and stuff like that when he was much younger. And we talked about the sort of noetic realm that psychedelics dissolve this boundary, right? If right now you close your eyes and the noetic realm is tied to the utilization of your imagination, psychedelics dissolve it to the sense that your imagination is coloring what you're perceiving as actual reality. And they absolutely open you up to demonic possession. I've seen it firsthand. But also I've, you know, people have, God can meet you anywhere. Now, I do not think psychedelics take you towards God. That is a presupposition that I totally disagree with in regards to psychedelic mysticism, the idea that you get into these altered states and they're going to bring you closer to ultimate reality. I disagree. Now, in relation to even today's conversation with addiction, can psychedelics or MDMA be helpful for somebody with PTSD? It certainly seems that way in clinical studies. And even, again, I know former military people that have had therapeutic psychedelic sessions and it's been beneficial, but it is incredibly dangerous spiritually because it does open you up to unseen entities and you don't really know who you're interacting with. And if you're not a Christian, you're not going to be able to test the spirits. As I've talked about, your mate Tom, he has a huge YouTube channel, promoted psychedelics. I think he's still promoting psychedelics, but for a brief period, he was interested in Orthodoxy, and I had him on a conversation on my channel. I wish him and his wife nothing but the best. Really, really great guy. But he talked about, when I did a stream with him, that he went to an ayahuasca ceremony in Peru, and he was a non-believer. He's really never been a believer in Christ. But the shaman, once everybody was loaded on ayahuasca, started to, what he perceived to be, make sexual advances towards the women in the group. He saw demonic activity, demons. He felt this incredible sense of evil in his presence. And he was getting ready to have a terrible, terrible trip. And he started to call out to Jesus Christ, and everything began to stop. And if you go and you do internet searches, this is a common phenomenon that people that go into these psychedelic states and they start encountering what they perceive to be, again, most people are sort of morally relativistic, but then they start experiencing what they are perceiving as evil, and they call out to Jesus Christ, and it's the only thing that makes it stop. You know, calling out to Thor or Zeus isn't going to do it. But when they call out to Jesus Christ, these things stop. I think that's a huge testimony for, again, the reality, and how, again, the scripture tells us how we have to test the spirits. But thank you so much for the super chat, Alex P. I do appreciate it. In regards to weed and dabs, it doesn't open you up to demons to the same degree. I have an article highlighting that the relationship to psychosis, that there is a relationship to cannabis use and the increase of paranoia. Now, like I've told people, and again, I do not advocate for the use of any of these substances anymore, but I did smoke weed basically every day from the age of 19 to when I quit, basically when I became Orthodox, 30. And it can certainly influence people's opinions, their worldview, and their morality. I've noticed that when I did smoke, I was much more reluctant to pray. And I think there's something there, right? And I think we all need to watch that in our own spiritual lives. Like, what is it that we do that makes us not want to pray? Because when I'm rocking and rolling spiritually, like, I'm praying all day long and it feels good. I love it. But again, previously I've kind of got this under control. But when I did slip or I watched pornography or something like that, all of a sudden now I don't want to do it. I don't want to pray. And so we have to watch, like, what are the behavioral patterns that we engage in that make us not want to pray? Because I think there's something really there. And that's something that we can just watch in our spiritual life. Yeah, weed cucks your testosterone. It absolutely can. It absolutely can. I've now, since I quit weed, I've become, yes, much more masculine. And I found out who I was. I think that drugs in general can cause a sort of minor delusion where you really don't know who you are, and you're constantly looking and trying new things and exploring identities. And that is a form of mental insanity when, again, sanity is healthy mind and a healthy body. And unfortunately, people are losing it. Kristen says, I think weed now is so much stronger than it used to be. Yeah, that's no joke. And he's talking about dabs. Dabs are highly concentrated, and that they'll shoot you off like a rocket. It's no better than stronger drugs. Yeah, weed today is way stronger than it used to be. And weed isn't physically addictive, but there's certainly addictive dimensions to the utilization of marijuana regularly, because you begin to think that you need it to function. And that is a delusion in and of itself, because you really don't. I want to give a very special thank you to my sister Amp Town, gives 5 COTEL Crew memberships. Thank you so much. Amp Town 1 gives 5 COTEL Crew memberships. Welcome to the COTEL Crew, Orthodox Centurion. Welcome to the COTEL Crew, Kyrie Runte. Welcome to the COTEL Crew, Brody Alexander, young old boy. Welcome, Melly. Welcome, Jay Daniel, and welcome, Surfing USA. Thank you so much, guys. And it looks like I missed a super chat. Let me go back and find that one. Sorry about that. DA sends in $5 Canadian, says, first live since watching half of your content. Keep doing God's work. Well, thank you so much, DA, for the super chat. And I truly appreciate that that comment. You know, I pray that God can use whatever I do for the glory of him and his kingdom. So pray for me. I can use all the prayers I can get. Oh my gosh. And we got another generous offering of 5 COTEL Crew memberships by Beyond Seraphim. Thank you so much, brother. Welcome, Lucas Williams. Welcome, PKD's Ghost. Welcome, Clavier. Welcome, Passio Singer. And welcome, Solomon, for the COTEL Crew membership. Thank you so much, Beyond Seraphim. God bless you, bro. Really, really appreciate that. And yeah, Orthodox Centurion says, I used to smoke dabs daily. The stuff I'd get was usually 97.3% pure THC. Yeah, it's a whole nother level. It's the amount of THC in a dab, that's way different than a joint or something like that. But we have to watch out. So, and I've known people that marijuana and stuff like that causes them to have more schizophrenic, paranoid behavior. And so, as Orthodox, we just don't need that stuff to progress spiritually. And I think that's the lie that so many people are given, is that you need some type of stimulant to progress spiritually. And the whole thing is Christ has already done it. Our natural bodies, we have it all. We just need to align ourselves and live correctly. Yeah. What's live resin? Oh, anyways, thank you so much, Amptown 1 and Beyond Seraphim. Thank you so much. God bless you. Yeah, and in California, they'll deliver weed right to you. That's a fact, because when I lived in California, they had a delivery dispensary. I used it back when I was into that stuff. So yeah, so true. And Frankie D sends in 2 more super chats. Let me address those real quick before we continue on with some of our articles. Frankie D throw in another $5. Thank you so much, Frankie D. God bless you, brother. He says, yeah, my bad. I think working on cars is great stuff. I guess I'm seeing the furry thing as a lower form of that attempt at self-expression through commoditization. Yeah. Customization. I see. A much lower form, but I may be way out about. No, I think you're onto something. I agree generally with what you're saying, but furries they're living in an alternate world. They're living in an alternate reality. That is a pure form of psychosis. So yeah, I agree generally with what you're speaking, but I think, that's one of the things that I want to work on better as a man is, my dad he is great at working on like cars and classic cars. And if something breaks, he knows exactly what it is. And this is something that me as a man that I feel deficient in. The ability to, build a house. Certainly I can work with my hands. I know how to use a hammer and drill and all that type of stuff. I had a father, so he showed me a lot what to do. But as a man, and when I think about myself being a father, one of the things that I feel deficient is the ability to work on automobiles. And so now, of course, everything is like computer oriented. You have to hook it up to the computer for the diagnostic test and everything. But I think there's a real masculinity in being able to care for and work on everything that you own. But as you highlight, certainly there's aspects where that gets exaggerated, and people's identity are totally tied to their Corvette or their Mustang all souped up, or their Subaru, whatever it may be. So I get your point. And then Frankie D threw in another $5. Thank you so much, Frankie D. He says, I've been reflecting lately on how many men who are very masculine cannot get their kids to not be disrespectful and bought onto the culture. And I think this culture is so wicked, they cannot raise their kids right. And I see the same things as an escape. I agree. I see the inability for children to act correctly is rampant in our society. And I have seen, masculine men with children that can't behave, but it's sort of a coddling, right? I've seen it so many times, is that, I think younger parents, generally speaking, just don't have the same stoic sternness that our older parents had. My parents were like that. And so if I'm sitting there crying or something, they're not going to put up with it, or they're going to wait till I just tire out. When I was a little kid, where now they can't deal with the crying, they can't deal with the whining. And so they have to pacify them right away. It's like training a dog. And I don't mean to equate humans to dogs, but anybody who's is familiar with how you train like a big dog. Like, I like pit bulls, I like boxers, I like Dobermans, I like Rottweilers, big dogs. That's what I like. And when you train them, you have to be stern, and your will has to dominate their will. That's how they submit, and they become the best animals in the world. But if you don't have a will that's strong enough to make them submit, they're going to become, as Cesar Millan says, the pack leader. And I think, again, I don't want to be so crude to equate training a dog to raising a child. Obviously, it's very different. But to a degree, parents seem to not have the will to maintain order and keep things in line, And so I think that was, I think that's just a huge factor, is that you as an adult, you have to have a will that is dominant. It doesn't mean you're rude or mean or abusive or anything like that. It's just that your will is the way. When somebody says, oh, why do I have to do that? It's because I said so. And that's the end of the line. And I think most parents just can't do that, unfortunately, because again, we're just living in a softer generation. So anyways, sorry for that. Getting on my soapbox. I apologize to anybody who has children and say that I'm out of line. I apologize. That's just my general perspective. Maybe it'll change once I have children, God willing. I hope to have many. So anyways, thank you so much, Frankie D, for that. And we had another super chat, just $20 sent in anonymous, says based. Well, thank you so much, anonymous, for the generous super chat. God bless you guys. Thank you so much, guys, for your support tonight. Really, really appreciate that. You guys have been incredibly generous. Okay, well, let's now get back to the stream here for a few. So one of the things that I wanted to highlight is that living in a city can really mess with your mental health. And so this article right here, which is coming from, Healthline, I don't know anything about this website, but it's highlighting that, again, living in cities can have substantial influences on your mental health. For instance, heavy traffic makes it challenging for me to socialize with my suburban friends. Where was it? Compared to rural residents, researchers found that urbanites are 21% more likely to have anxiety disorders and 39% more likely to have mood disorders. And that's a 2017 meta-analysis also found that rates of the following mental health conditions were higher among those living in urban areas: PTSD, anger management, and generalized anxiety disorder. So what's the explanation? According to psychiatrists, urban living gives the brain a workout which alters how we cope with stress. So here's how this works. The constant stimulation of the city life can propel the body into a stressful state, which is known as a fight or flight response. That can make us more vulnerable to mental health concerns such as depression, anxiety, and substance use. This might help explain why 19.1% of Americans live with an anxiety disorder, while 6.7% have depression. City living can also chip away at your psychological immune system. I'm sure there is a difference in those who got the jibby jab and those who didn't in regards to where they lived. I'm just speculating there. According to psychologists, this environmental stress can increase their risk for developing psychiatric conditions such as anxiety, depression, and bipolar disorder. Okay, so I'll share this article with you guys. Feel free if you want to check that out. I'll put that right there. Okay, so moving on to the next article related to this. Mental health in America, a growing crisis, as we all know. So this is a article written by, it looks like an MD, PhD, and a PhD talking about mental health. The United States Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, yikes, reported that in 2019, 4.17% of adults aged 18 years or older reported regular feelings of depression, and 11.2%. 40% of Americans with a 12-month history of severe mental disorders do not receive any treatment. Disorders were, okay, yada, yada, yada. Here we go. The ongoing COVID-19 pandemic increased mental health care needs while simultaneously restricting access, which unknown long-term consequences. From August 2020 to February 2021, the CDC described an increase in the population of adults reporting recent symptoms of anxiety or depression from 36.4% to 41.5%, with the fraction reporting unmet mental health care needs increasing from 9.2 to 11.7. Among children and adolescents, the proportion of mental health related emergency department visits for those aged 5 to 11 years and 12 to 17 years increased 24 to 31% respectively compared to 2019. In 1 year, the amount of visits to the emergency room for mental problems from ages 5 to 17 has gone up 31%. Unreal. Antidepressant prescribing up 6% in the last 3 months of 2020. So this highlights that, again, it's the last few months of 2020. Overall statistics show that 23% more patients received an antidepressant item in the third quarter of 2020 and 2021 compared to the same quarter in 2015 through 2016, as we would already suspect. Astounding increase in antidepressant use by Americans. Again, we are unfortunately the most medicated population on the planet. Remember when the best-selling book Listening to Prozac came out almost 20 years ago? Now Americans aren't just reading about Prozac, they're taking it. And the amount in the antidepressant Celexa, Effexor, Paxil, Zoloft, to name a few, in astounding numbers. According to a recent release yesterday, the National Center for Health Statistics, the rate of antidepressant use of this country among teens and adults, people of ages 12 and older, increased by almost 400% from 1988 and 1994 to 2005 to 2008. 400%. 400% in increase in the use of antidepressant medication from 1988 to 1994 compared to 2005 to 2008. That is unreal. That is unreal. Here's an article. Again, it's official. Intelligence levels are dropping. This is actually a pretty interesting article. While it's probably a combination of two studies confirmed that IQ levels are in fact dropping, it seems counterintuitive because of the internet. We now have more information at our fingertips than ever before. Maybe people feel that because so much information is readily available, they don't need to learn or retain as much. For decades, people were getting smarter as measured by their IQ level. This was known as the Flynn effect. It was named after the researcher who discovered the average IQ scores had been rising about 3 points per decade since World War II. That all changed with people now in their 40s. The drop in IQ is generally thought to have begun with those born in the mid-1970s, as has not reversed itself. Research shows that IQ scores of young people are now dropping by 7 points every generation. 7 points is a lot, especially when the average IQ score in the United States is now 98, according to the World Population Review. Singapore and Hong Kong have the highest scores of an average of 108. An analysis of about 730,000 IQ tests by researchers in Norway a couple years ago is one study that documented the lowering of intelligence levels. Other studies have shown similar results. Scientists point finger in part at the differences in the way math and languages are taught in schools. I need to change. Yeah, I got that. Taught in schools. Other possible culprits. Where did I go? Culprits include poor education systems, ubiquitous technologies that consume people's attention, and a change in diets and nutrition. People are eating less fish and fish makes people smarter. One study found that kids who eat fish at least once a week scored 4.8 points higher on their IQ test. Adding to the problem of dropping intelligence levels is the fact that people who are not very smart actually think that they are. We all know people who fit this description, known as the Dunning-Kruger effect. Named after the psychologist who documented it in scientific speak, it's a cognitive bias that causes people to overestimate their knowledge or ability. We definitely know people like that. This is why, for example, people who aren't good at math think that they are. By contrast, people who do have advanced math skills say they're not good in math. That's because the more people know, the more they realize how much there is to learn. It can be argued that IQ scores are not a predictor of success or happiness in life, and therefore not truly meaningful. However, on a broad scale, the average IQ score of a country's population has been linked to the country's economic growth and innovation, so intellect does have value. It's possible that the studies showing lower IQ scores are flawed because they use too small of a test pool, or that IQ tests haven't been updated to measure people's current intelligence. But I think the studies are reflecting the sad reality that our collective intellect is dropping. So again, not good, not good. Here is an article on the state of homelessness in 2023. I think it's interesting to note that, some of the most liberal states have some of the highest amounts of homelessness. So we see here the darkest countries are the ones that have the highest homelessness per 10,000 people. We see New York. Interestingly, Vermont has quite a bit. And then, of course, as we know, California, Oregon, Washington. So pretty interesting. You know, I'm over here in Indiana on flyover country, and we still have it. Like I said, I had the story that I just talked about, going to a date night with my fiance, and we saw the mental health problem with homeless people right then and there. So this is an article about the growth of homelessness. Homelessness has been on the rise since 2017, experiencing an overall increase of 6%. Let's see here. There was something that talked about homelessness and mental health. I forget. We're not going to go through it. The total number of people experiencing homelessness per year by type. Let's see. Overall. Yeah. Anyways, you get it. I'm going to share this link with you guys. This is actually a pretty decent article. So if anybody wants to read that, feel free to. You can put that right there. We had a super chat that came in from Bruce Roberts. Shout out to Bruce Roberts. He says, throws in $10 and says, a video you put out made me stop doing drugs. Keep up the good work. May God have mercy on us. May God have mercy on us all. Bruce Roberts, have I helped in any way? Glory to God. Glory to God, because I was in the exact same boat for a very, very long time. So thank you for that, Bruce Roberts. Truly appreciate that. Okay, continuing on here. Again, we've already looked at this one. What is gender dysphoria? I went to the American Psychiatric Association. Okay, you get it. We don't need to look into that. Serious mental illness and homelessness. This is a study looking at the rates of mental illness and homelessness. People untreated serious mental illness comprises of an estimated 1/3 of the total homeless population in the United States, and even a higher percentage of women and individuals who are chronically homeless. So again, the decline of mental institutes and mental hospitals for those who have mental problems has led to them living out on the street, where at least before they would be sheltered in a place that could care for them and provide for their needs. This was just a little something I had in regards to urban living can increase the development of mental health issues such as anxiety, depression. Yeah. We read another article, but environmental stress such as pollution, noise, inequality, and isolation can increase the risk of developing these disorders. Strong noise annoyance is associated with a twofold higher prevalence of depression and anxiety in the general population. Nighttime lights that are 6 times more intense than people living in small towns can impact sleep and make us feel stressed and anxious. However, mental illnesses are caused by a complex tangle of genetics and life circumstances, and it's rarely possible to pick out a single issue to name it as a culprit. This was an article talking about Trump derangement syndrome, and I brought that up because, again, psychosis is the inability to live in reality and inability to actually perceive real threats. I argue that the people who are so scared about white supremacy and Nazis in America are experiencing a sort of psychosis that's related to the Trump derangement syndrome, but their inability to actually assess the real dangers in our society, like claiming that Hitler, and I don't know if you guys seen the latest articles that Trump referred to the people trying to put him in jail. Was it Lolita James, the prosecutor in New York case, as vermin? And now they're trying to say, oh, look, well, Hitler said the same thing. He's just like Hitler. Here's an article on psychosis cases rise in England as pandemic hits mental health. 29% rise in referrals for the first suspected episode of psychosis between April 2019 and April 2021. There was a 29% increase. Yeah, we just talked about that. The rise continued throughout the spring with 9,460 referred in May of 2021, up 26% from May of 2019. The charity Rethink Mental Illness is urging the government to invest more in early intervention for psychosis to prevent further deterioration in people's mental health, from which it could take them years to recover. And then here's the article. I actually did a video reading this article and discussing it. I'll share this with you guys. This is Insanity and Demonic Possession and Patristic Thought. I covered this for members over on my website, but I'll share this with you guys. So if you want to check it out. Okay. I think that's going to come towards the end of, antidepressant use rising in U.S., mostly in women, CDC says. So again, can't help but think about the absence of traditional relationships by so many women, the lack of that. They're not having children. They're not getting married. Not saying that those are the only ways in which a woman can be happy, but it certainly gives somebody's life much more meaning. And I definitely think there's a correlation there. And then the social dilemma, social media in your mental health. Social media platforms like Instagram made headlines. Okay, let's. According to the Pew Research Center, 69% of adults and 81% of teens in the U.S. use social media. And social media is a feel-good chemical linked to pleasurable activities such as sex, food, and social interactions. The platforms are designed to be addictive and are associated with anxiety, depression, and even physical ailments. But what makes users come back for more, even when they can literally make them feel sick? When the outcomes is unpredictable, the behavior is more likely to repeat. Think of a slot machine. If game players knew they never were going to get money by playing the game, they would play. And so here's an article on the effects of social media on your mental health, and I'll share that with you guys as well. So that kind of covers the articles that I wanted to highlight. We can watch a few of, again, these distressing videos of furries. Maybe we don't. I'm not a huge fan, but for example, here is an example of somebody describing what a psychotic episode is.
Hi, baby.
And you'll see that she highlights that she believed that, again, it was an irrational fear of threats.
Have you ever experienced psychosis? I have. Let's talk about it. When I was living in New York in 2016, I had a psychotic episode, and it was terrifying and distressing. I had exposed brick in my apartment, and there were like tiny holes in the walls between the bricks. And I thought that the super to my apartment building had planted cameras and was watching me. My apartment was the size of a shoebox, and yet I thought that someone was in there with a weapon ready to attack me. I thought that every person on the street was following me, so it would take me double the amount of time to walk anywhere because I would just stop in my tracks if I thought someone was following me, which was everyone. I thought I was an angel reincarnated and so much more, but this is just to raise awareness about psychosis. It's no joke. Hi, babe.
Does that sound anything like maybe contemporary people? I would say so.
I recorded myself having a psychotic breakdown, and I thought I'd post it here for science. This happened to me about a week ago, and I had no fucking clue what was going on, so
just based on physical appearance, she seems to be fit in our general category for those who may be more likely to be affected by mental illness. So here we go.
Checked in with my therapist today, and she said that it was indeed psychosis. This has been sitting in my drafts for a bit, and I almost didn't post it because I'm having a fucking psychotic breakdown, but I chose to do it anyway just so people could see what it's like. But yeah, here it is. Okay, hi. We got the therapist confirmed mania, and I quite literally feel myself breaking all connection from reality, but I don't want anyone to like physically witness this in person, and I don't know how to fucking deal with it, so I'm gonna do it here. Like I feel like I'm on the verge of tears, but I'm also like about to start hysterically fucking laughing at the same time, and it also feels like I'm just gonna start yelling at someone, but like it's all fucking here. And like I feel it, but it's not here. Like when I say I am quite literally feeling every single emotion at the same time, and like it's crazy. It just feels so fucking overwhelming. Like it's, literally the air around me feels like thick. I don't know how to describe it. Like it's thick. And then it's like the thickness, right? It just like fades into you and it like starts to eat away at you, but like the thickness is also just emotions, so it's just like everything and it's insane. How do you deal with this? Like what the fuck is this? And it fucking feels like so over.
Okay, so you guys get it. We're not going to watch all that, but I don't think we need to watch more, but you guys get it. You guys get it. And so the point was to highlight that mental health is a major problem right now in America and generally speaking in the Western world. Oh my gosh, what is this? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. What is happening to people?
Which fandom has the stinkiest fans?
God, as a part of a fandom that I'm a part of, unfortunately, it would have to be the furry community. I've heard horrid things. I haven't gone to a convention, so I can either confirm or deny it, but the memes exist for a reason. Wear your deodorant.
Which fandom?
Yikes. Yikes. Anyways, guys, I can't really watch too much of these videos. I watched enough trying to prepare for the stream, so that's going to do it for me tonight. I want to give a special thank you to everyone who showed some support. So a major shout out to Slowboy Whiteboard, major shout out to Tatiana, James Johnson, DA, Ostimos Prime, Mr. Smirks, Amptown 1, and Beyond Seraphim. Thank you so much for gifting 5 COTEL Crew memberships. And thank you very much, Bruce Roberts, for the super chat. I got to give a very special thank you to Frankie D. God bless you, brother. And thank you so much for your support today. Really appreciate that. And then over on the dono chat, I got to give a special thank you to, Ben Folds 5 Chairs sends in the super chat, sends in $5 and says, just got here and got to run, but looking forward to checking this one out later. Thanks, brother. Well, thank you very much, Ben Folds 5 Chairs. Really appreciate the super chat, and I hope you like it. We kind of went all over the place today. We talked a lot about a different things. So thank you so much for the super chat, Ben Folds 5 Chairs. Thank you so much, Anonymous. Says based. Thank you very much. Shout out to Alex P. Shout out to the anonymous donator who threw in $100. Thank you so much for you. Shout out to Blue Skittle. Shout out to Bon Jovi 1912. And shout out to Joe Biden Werewolf. So thank you all so much for supporting today's stream. I just want to say smash that like for everybody who's here. I really appreciate it. And yeah, this is going to do it. Like I said, mental health is actually a contagion. And we see this contagion spreading in our society through the proliferation of social media and these weird fantasy worlds where people think they're again, a variety of different ways, whether it be gender dysphoria or furries or whatnot. And we're witnessing a major mental health crisis in America. And because the lack or the pursuit for deinstitutionalization, we don't have hospitals and wards for these people to go to try to get help. So instead, they're let out on the street, and we see the homelessness problem and that epidemic tied with mental health. So this all leads to, again, a spiritual problem in our society because Christ is the way, Christ is the truth, and Christ is the life. And so if we don't have a transcendent God to look to orient ourselves, and of course, Christ and Holy Trinity is God, I think a lot of people just get lost And unfortunately, our society is becoming quite literally insane. And this is affecting everybody. So God bless everyone out there. Wish you all a wonderful night. Looks like last super chat just came in from Eric G. Throws in $5. Says, where did you get your collections? Where did you get your collection of Lives of Saints? Great show, by the way. Well, I don't have a collection per se. I have a handful of books. I have the Life and Wisdom of Saint Porphyrios. I have Saint Paisios, and then I have the Life of Saint Patrick of Ireland, my patron saint. So I think those are the 3 books that I have that are explicitly the lives of the saints. So I don't have a collection. I just get one when I hear it's great. I try to get it if I'm able to. So if you have it, I would recommend this one right here, St. Paisios of Mount Athos. But whoever your patron saint is, start with that one. Read the Lives of the Saints there, and then just start slowly growing your library. But thank you very much, Eric G, for the $5. And guys, I think that's going to do it. Let me just double check, make sure I don't miss anybody. Don't see anybody over on Streamlabs, and just double checking Dono Chat, and that is done. So guys, thank you so much. Thank you so much to all the super chatters. Smash that like, and I will be back Sunday with a very interesting stream with Rachel Wilson, based homeschool mom. We're going to be getting into the proliferation of black magic, or related to abortion. So I got to figure out how exactly to title that stream Sunday with her, because we're going to be talking about the growth of women on TikTok promoting the abortion as a form of ritual magic. So I need to talk with her. Obviously, there's a lot of hot words there we can't put in the title, but that's what we're essentially going to be talking about Sunday. So anyways, guys, God bless you all. Have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you Sunday. As always, until then, God bless.